You're listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey ask the question, what is the meaning of life? And what is the best socioeconomic system?
Is that
No one's going to know what that means. Yes, that's Dexter. No one's going to know what that means. But that is one of my favorite quotes from the movie that we watched this week.
Oh, yeah, we watched We Can Be Heroes.
We watched We Can Be Heroes, which was a beautiful documentary.
You're Jody.
And you're Andrea.
Yeah.
I almost said and I'm Andrea. Good Lord.
Do you think listeners like when this
if
is the
they
vibe?
don't, they're not here anymore because this has been the vibe recently.
We told you guys last week that we were watching We Can Be Heroes. I don't remember if we said that Carina Wong and Judson Packard would be with us.
I think we did.
But they are with us in this episode.
Yes.
You're going to hear us gush about the documentary for the next hour and a half or so I won't get too much into it, but it's a documentary about a LARP camp, live action role play. If you're not familiar with like LARP or tabletop gaming or Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of thing, Judd will fill us in at the top of the episode, so you'll know everything you need to. I think this conversation totally works even if you haven't seen the documentary, because it's about so many like broader questions and things that whether you were either a little bit of an outsider teen or have dealt with being neurodivergent or part of the like any sort of outsider feelings that I think no matter what, I think everybody
You've never
can relate
been able
to that.
To cast a successful spell. I mean, who can't relate?
Exactly. I think there's so much here to dive into. And as will be revealed shortly, Carina's from Jersey.
The thing you can't see when you listen to this conversation is when Andrea starts explaining to Carina and Judd where our podcast came from and how it came from this, came from the chat section of a podcast called New Jersey is the World, and starts describing all of that. Carina, on video, we're all on Zoom, Carina starts wildly gesturing and looking super excited. And I was like, yeah.
She did at one point say New Jersey is the center of the world. I think she did say that phrase at one point. So yeah, she's one of us for sure.
Yeah, no short shrift to Judd. I love talking to them, but there's something about meeting a fellow North Jersey person, especially someone who's created something like this, where it's just like, oh yeah, like we're friends now, whether you like it or not.
Totally. It's just so funny because we didn't pick this one because of the Jersey connection. And in fact, I was kind of looking forward to not being outnumbered because I know Judd from grad school. So Judd and I spent 2 years in South Jersey together. So I really was excited to have some, to not have North Jersey be especially because Judd isn't from Jersey, to be clear.
Right. But they did support you with the, you can't, again, because this is an audio medium, you can't see the fact that Judd did have a Jersey Devil puppet around their neck almost the entire time. They spoke with us, and that was wonderful.
Yeah. You know what? Now's your reminder. If you're not following us on Instagram,
yes,
I'm trying to get a little more consistent with posting over there. So if you are a listener and you haven't followed us on Instagram, please do. It's kind of the only way we really have for all of you to communicate with each other and with us, or I guess it's the easiest way, I should say. And I'd love for this little community to keep growing.
And that Instagram is WatchersPodNJ.
That's right. Nice and easy.
We'll say it again at the end.
That's
right. Might as well say it now too.
So yeah, just a little bit of background info. Carina will kind of give us her story too, but Carina Wong is an award-winning documentary filmmaker and journalist. Her works appeared on HBO, Hulu, National Geographic, Vice News, and the New York Times. She was a director for the first season of We're Here, which I loved. It's the HBO docuseries. Yeah, with Bob.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, just the first season.
You didn't let me do any research, so I didn't find out any of this stuff.
Yeah, you're learning now.
Great. She's so impressive.
Yeah, she's got a really great list of credits. She's worked on some really interesting stuff. She's super talented. But We're Here is the one that really caught my eye because I love that first season so much. It's the drag queens, Bob the drag queen, Shangela, Eureka, and they travel around to different cities and connect with people who are maybe not the most understanding of the drag community. And it's another lesson in connection and empathy, which you and I are both, always interested in.
Yes.
Yeah, and We Can Be Heroes, which we'll get into in depth today. Like I said, takes us inside a LARP camp where teens find escape, strength, and belonging through the transformative magic of role-playing. It's getting great reviews. It won the Special Jury Award for Bravery and Empathy at South by, the Audience Award for Best Feature Documentary at the Woodstock Film Festival, and the Best Feature Documentary Award at the Nevada City Film Festival. And I think Carina said there are a few other festivals that it is likely to pop up in, and I'm sure it will be received coolly well there. And yeah, Judson Packard, who is also in this episode, like I said, is the camp director. They're featured throughout the documentary and give us a lot of context for the camp itself that I think is really, and for LARP from a personal perspective, because that's one of the things that I think is so interesting, is that Carina came into this without that background. And so I think maybe coming in that way let her kind of let the story shape itself kind of organically.
To give her credit, and I think we did when we talked to her, there's so many ways this could have gone wrong.
Totally.
With the wrong director.
Totally.
And one thing that she was particularly good at was letting the camp and Judd and the campers kind of like not infringing on their experience, and then kind of letting them take the lead in what they were comfortable and not comfortable with. Because when you first told me about this doc and you said it's, you know, about a camp and there's teenagers in it.
And I mean, there are young.
There's young kids. Yeah. Like
kids.
11, 12 years old. And I was like, oh, you know, that could be problematic if it's not done well. And luckily it was done super well.
Yeah.
So yeah. A lot of respect for the people that they're documenting.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I can't wait for folks to hear this conversation and to see the documentary. We get into this at the end of the episode a little bit, but if you find this conversation compelling, if you are interested in seeing the documentary, the best thing you can do is make noise about it online. I'll put links to where you can follow the doc and Carina and the camp, and just like comment, share, all that stuff. Even more than you would maybe for the episode itself, you know, letting the powers that be know that this is something you're interested in being able to see is the best way to make that happen.
Absolutely. All right. So I guess we'll jump into our conversation with Carina and Judd.
I told folks last week we were going to be talking with the two of you about my and Jody's new favorite documentary, We Can Be Heroes, which they won't have seen yet, but this is going to get them so excited to see it when they can.
Yes.
Super exclusive.
Yeah, you guys are special.
I'm going to get one thing out of the way up top. Jody and I started this podcast as a Jersey media focused podcast, and it has since branched out to cover other things, but every week we come up with a Jersey connection. And for this one, when I was first watching the documentary, I was like, oh, maybe it could be that, which we might talk about, Judd and I went to grad school in Jersey together. And then I noticed there's a Jersey license plate in the documentary. I thought maybe that could be it. I just learned something today. Carina, where are you from?
New Jersey. It's so funny. My husband's Brazilian, and he's like been sort of learning about American culture and all these things. And the more and more he interacts with just random people we meet, or just, you know, spending more time in the States, he's just like, I think New Jersey is the center of the world, the center of the universe, because everyone is from
like
New Jersey. Man. I know. I was like, and we're getting married.
I would have known by all of the gesturing you were doing as Andrea was leading up to that, but the wildly flailing arms. So we have to cover this then. Where in New Jersey?
I'm from northern New Jersey. I grew up in North Caldwell, but went to school in Montclair. So it's like very Sopranos.
Yeah. Oh, I'm familiar. I went to Montclair State for college.
Amazing. I love Montclair State.
I grew up in Bergen County. Andrew's never heard me say that before.
I was born in Bergen County, but then grew up in Essex County.
There you go.
Are you both from Jersey?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm from South, though. I'm from right outside of Camden.
Have her say water. You'll hear it.
Have you say water.
I just...
So I just had to get that out of the way, because it happens. Yeah,
I know.
More often
That's great.
A lot of people, a lot of artists, a lot of the coolest people are from New Jersey. I love when you go fly into Newark Airport. It's now they have like Whitney Houston. It's like the first thing. I'm like, that's right.
That's right. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, don't forget it.
The Whitney Houston rest stop off of the Parkway or whichever one it is.
Correct.
That, and there's like the Larry Walker one. And I'm like, we are really with Larry Walker, not with Whitney Houston, who's obviously top tier, but with Larry Walker, I'm like, that is so specific, niche.
I mean, there's
Hall of Fame. No, not talking about here, but
I mean, there's also the John Bon Jovi one that used to be Cheesequake
State
Park. Yeah,
I really thought we were going to give our listeners a Jersey break this week, but no,
never.
No.
Now, Judd, how does this feel for you? Do you want to talk something really niche about where you grew up?
Wayfinder is something really niche from where I grew up. Like I'm involved in this because my therapist recommended it when I was 13 and I never looked back. Wayfinder has a lot of people from Jersey being here, but also, and I can grab this before this episode's over, we did in 2020 run a virtual game where the kids were cryptid hunting, and we were like, okay, we can do a different kind of production here. So I had someone make, and I still have, our puppet of the Jersey Devil. So yeah, we did a whole Jersey Devil plotline in one of our LARPs, and now occasionally the Jersey Devil puppet shows up just in random scenes, and like someone has brought the Jersey Devil just to be a weird little hand puppet.
You can't pin the Jersey Devil down.
No. So,
oh my God, that's amazing.
This just got so niche.
It doesn't take very long.
Our listeners, though, just to give both of you a little context, most of our listeners came over from a podcast that I used to produce and co-host that Jody was part of, literally called New Jersey is the World. So most of them are going to be thrilled with this.
Love it.
Cool, let me go get the Jersey Devil, and it can just be sitting right here for the whole episode.
The dream. Please do.
Oh my gosh.
I would love to know what Judd thinks the Jersey Devil sounds like. their Jersey Devil voice is like, I feel like that would probably tell us a lot. And then I swear we're going to talk about this documentary because it's so good.
It's really good.
I'm so happy in this space right now. Let's keep going. It is wild though. Like no matter because I've traveled a lot as a journalist, and it's like no matter where I am, you find that Jersey connection. I'm like, I guess it's just so densely populated. I don't know what it is.
Well, and I feel like a lot of people come. That too, but like a lot of people come through that area when they're moving to the United States too, and so like people just stay because it's right there. Oh my God, I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, there we go.
The Jersey Devil has fur.
You don't know?
And bat-like wings.
I picture leathery bat-like wings, fur, skull head,
and
that's like my little fancy lady.
Yeah,
mink scarf.
You've got like a stole, but like a Jersey Devil stole.
There we go.
Okay. So, We Can Be Heroes, incredible documentary. I want to start, like I said 100 hours ago, for folks, Judd, if we could start with you. For folks who aren't familiar with what a LARP camp is and who have not seen the doc yet, can you give us the breakdown?
Sure. So if you're totally unaware of it, LARP, let me just move that out of the way of my face. Sorry, Jersey, you're the real star. But LARP stands for live action role play, and it's really an umbrella term. A lot of people who have experience with it often have LARPed with one group or in one game, or they know someone who's been playing the same game for a long time. And something we talk about a lot is that like every LARP group, every LARP game is like, oh, we invented LARP. And they're all 100% correct. Because it is this umbrella term, right? Nobody's doing exactly the same things. Like everybody's games are slightly different and they're very unique, and a lot of how you play transfers over, but not necessarily what you play. So like that is important to understand. Our LARPs are called the adventure game. We take kids throughout the week. It's designed that if you came on Monday, never having LARPed, never having role played, you'd be fine. We do a lot of summer camp level things, sort of like trust exercises and that kind of stuff, and crafts and playing a lot of games. And then we're building towards our LARP later in the week, where kids will play characters of their design and costumes that we largely provide. They're obviously welcome to bring things. But there's always costumes and equipment for everybody, and go through a storyline that like we've written the main bullet points of, but the details are really kind of wherever they take it. And the truth is that we go through the main plot, and like we're doing this thing that we're very committed to. We've built props, we have costumes, people have learned their characters, and the kids are like, oh, that's cool. Actually, my brother and I just reconnected after being lost across the magical sea, and I didn't know any of the plot happened. And like, that's not a bug, that's a feature. That's the point, right?
Yeah.
Nothing that we're doing is as good as what they're doing. And like, we are, I often think of it as we're just kind of providing the window dressing for the stories that they're telling. Camp wise, what a LARP camp is like, it's a summer camp wherein the thing that we're providing that gives you identity building and transformational experience and access to the person you want to be is this magical immersive theater programming. And I truly do, but like, while I'm of course a huge believer in this program, I've been involved with it for 20 plus years, started as a camper. I truly do believe that you could find that at tennis camp or at theater camp or whatever camp speaks to you. And like, we're just giving another space for it, and hopefully one that is providing some things in a more active way that aren't necessarily being out there. But like, that's the goal, is like creating that, making a camp where people can do that. And then at the end of the week and throughout the week, we all get to smack each other with swords.
You really, that's the real highlight.
Come for the sword, stay for the people.
Well, and like you say, that could happen at any camp, and maybe that's true. But when you talk about how you let the campers sort of develop their own story in such detail, that's the first time in a while I've heard the phrase safe space used in a way that wasn't derogatory in the documentary. And I really appreciated that, because these kids and all teenagers are going through such huge feelings, and like, it's not like safe space in the traditional sense of the term, like, oh, they have to be protected. It's actually the opposite. It's a place where they can like let that stuff out and experience it in a way where it's not going to tear them down. They're going to be able to like process it.
Yeah. As an observer, at least, like, I feel like the experience of being and witnessing the camp and the work that Judd does with these young people and all the counselors do, it's a safe space, but it's more that it's an expansive space so that it can fit all walks of life, all experiences, all sort of emotional stories of where everyone is coming from. And as Judd, I'm stealing this from Judd, but Judd has explained to me many a time, like, yeah, it's just how can we fit everyone here and make all those experiences feel held and honored in some way. And Judd, you said that someone could find this type of transformational experience perhaps at tennis camp. I went to tennis camp from the age of 5 to 18. And at least in the camps that I went to, I don't want to speak for all the tennis camps out there, but the ones that I went to, you did not find that. So It's very rare what you do, Judd. It's very rare.
I'm not trying to dog tennis camp here, have them come after me. I mostly just mean, like, I think there is, and I've done it having grown up in this space, there's a tendency to, you find a community, you find somewhere that really speaks to you and really allows you to kind of be you, and you say, this is a secret little enclave and I must protect it, and not, this is something that people made and are actively making, and like, we can do this elsewhere. And so like, if for me, in doing this work for all of our staff and doing this work, the rest of the leadership team, like, we all very actively engage in talking about, like, if the point is come to Wayfinder, the place where magic can happen and you can be you, then we don't want to do it. And if the point is instead like, magic exists, good places are possible, all you have to do is like work for them and build them.
Yeah.
And like, we can help people to do that.
It can happen elsewhere. It just doesn't often in places like tennis camp. But
yeah. I think like, what you need is people who are bought in and want to be there and want to be there in this way. And whatever you're bought into can provide this space. And it's hard. It is hard to find people who are bought in. I will cede that point. Yeah, I'll admit that.
No, Carina, you said you went to tennis camp, but so I say this every week now, and whenever we have a guest on, Jody and I kind of fell into covering documentaries. We picked one up one week and then just kind of stuck with the genre. And so we've been building this like conversation as different themes come up. And one of the things that we've been really interested in is how often a documentarian shows up in their documentary and why. Not only are you, I mean, it makes sense. Not only are you not in this one, but you have no, like, how did you, Jody and I know the answer to this because we did our research, but how did you come to find Wayfinder? What made you decide that it, you know, like, this is a story that more people needed to hear about?
Yeah, so I first heard about Wayfinder because of a friend who grew up going to Wayfinder. And even before I knew that, she just struck me as one of the most uninhibited, unafraid, just free human beings I had ever met. And is still a very dear friend to this day. And we were like working in Brooklyn in a now long and forgotten media company called Vice. And we were just in the basement of the office, and I would like pull her over to the coffee machine or into the bathroom and just like grill her. Like, how did you get this way? Why is no one else this way? And she was like, I don't know what it is. I don't know. I'm not sure. Oh, maybe it's this LARPing camp I went to as a kid. And she would just tell me like the craziest, most hilarious stories about this camp. And it explained everything that she was as an adult and sort of that bravery that she walked through the world with. And then, yeah, it was just like so obvious to me that it needed to be a documentary. It was just like, that was one of the first things that came out of our conversation. And just the thought of like, how incredible would it be to like really be in these young people's worlds and watch that sort of fantasy come to life. And perhaps that instinct came from being a teenager and being so in my head, creating worlds in my own way, being in my own emotional world that, to be honest, was quite dark and felt really different than what my reality was, and sort of the face and the shell that I needed to project on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, it was like, as soon as I heard it, it was like, it should be a documentary, which is typically code for me for, oh, I wish I had that. And I want to get closer to that space.
Yeah.
And then I met Judd, and I've heard from all the times we've talked now post filming that Judd thought I was a scam for a while, which I don't know. That kind of makes me proud in a weird way. I don't know why.
That's the Jersey in you.
Yeah,
I know.
You're a little shady.
little shady, a little forward. Has a bit of a weird accent from time to time. Slips in and out. But then we got to talking finally after Judd finally picked up my calls. And then, we were sort of off to the races. It was 2020, so there was some sort of reconnaissance virtually of watching young people play a fantasy game in Zoom boxes. But that actually really helped with the whole process. That's how it came to be in the beginning.
So that was my kind of, I have a million questions.
Go for it.
So that, like, Judd, then when you got that first call, like, what was your feeling?
We got a text from the mutual friend who Carina worked with, Julia, who's wonderful, and I was campers with and friends with growing up, being like, hey, my friend wants to make a movie about you, which I saw and I was like, that's fake. That's never going to happen. It was, the holidays. So I fully just blew it off. And then she reached out again and actually reached out up the chain, which not offended at all. And I think you talked to Corey first, and then we scheduled a call that was supposed to be like, a 15, 30-minute check-in, describe the project, and we ended up talking for like 2 hours.
What a good sign.
Yeah, about the program and about like, the concerns of it. And Carina, through this whole process, has really like, in a lot of ways that I think were essential for being able to do it, has really, in her process and the whole team's process, made sure that they were going about it in a way where the focus at camp remained on the kids' experience.
Totally.
And the cameras were in the background. And like things like they had to stop filming if in the middle of a moment a kid wanted it to stop.
Right.
And kids had spaces there where like, right, in the movie, we do our trust work where kids are kind of talking about things they're going through. And we had a side of the field that the documentary people did not have access to because the kids didn't want them to. And I don't think anything especially different was being said over there, but they just like didn't want that. And like those things being a part of it, and Carina really stressing wanting our engagement, wanting our involvement, wanting to make sure that this process didn't overtake the focus of what we were doing.
Yeah.
Was hugely important to us in doing it. And like, I don't know, I think it's safe to say, Carina, we've become pretty good friends through this. And like, I don't know that that's the normal experience of someone who a stranger shows up in your life pointing a camera at everything you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways it could have gone wrong. That's what I kept thinking about. Like, this documentary could have been done. There's so many landmines. You're working with kids.
So many.
You're working with, many kids who are at a very like emotionally volatile period of their life. Like, there's so many ways that there could have mistakes that could have been made, like ways to overstep, ways to sort of kind of step on and not just like, encourage and be a part of. Judd, when you talked about how your role at the camp is often to set the stage and then step back and let the kids run it, it kind of feels like that was the ethos of the documentary as well, even though obviously for a documentary you can't actually do that, but it had that feeling of like the adults in it are so removed. Like, Judd, you're there, but I even remember, so I teach, and there's a moment where I'm watching you watch them. And I'm watching you observe what they're saying and figuring out like how to stay in the background, but then kind of redirect or, kind of just, there's just this sense of like, the adults are there to catch you if there's a problem, but otherwise like you're free. And that's sort of...
Oh no, we've been seen.
Yeah. by a teacher. Like I was watching, I was like, oh yeah, I know that face. That's the closely observant face of the group of people to make sure things are going as they're supposed to. So,
well, and in terms of adults, I said to Jody, I was like, do we, and we do, but this is just to like, do we even see any parents in this? And we do a little bit, but I was thinking like, there's so many other versions of this documentary where every few minutes you cut to a parent explaining their child. And I love so much that that's not in here at all. Like these kids really get to speak for themselves. It really feels like their story. They seem really as comfortable as a kid can be. Like I also, now this is a whole other thing, but I have never seen, and I wonder how much of this has to do with most of these kids being returned campers, I think, right? I've never seen kids. I don't know that I have the self-awareness some of these kids have to talk about.
Oh my gosh.
That was, and to do it on camera. Like, how did...
They're so good at talking about
it's not really a question there.
Emotions.
Well, thank you for saying all of that, because it's like the idea, even that this was a very, very tough documentary to make because it could get exploited very quickly whenever you work with young people, was a top concern of mine. And like, thanks, Judd, for throwing me so many compliments before. But truly, I think I came into this with more just questions and like a fear of doing it wrong. And then I was so relieved when I realized that I wanted to be in this world and come to this world of the Wayfinder experience. And Judd and the counselors were so ready to sort of teach me how to keep these kids safe, how to keep the space full of trust and sort of, just reciprocal and warm and caring, especially even with the documentary crew. So I learned so much about how to create a real safe, expansive space, and also how to put that into my practice as a filmmaker from Judd, from the Wayfinder experience. So it was something, and, I think all filmmakers would really agree with this. Like, you don't know how to make a movie until you're done making it. So the process of making it was just learning, how do we do this with care? And it was a lot of conversations. It was a lot of, oh, I'm not sure about that. And speaking up when I had a question or when I had a doubt or was scared I was going to make the misstep. But I think where Judd and I and the rest of the Wayfinder team got along so well is that we came with the same concern. We came from sort of the same heart space and what we wanted. Like, what I wanted for the film is what the Wayfinder experience wants for their young people. So the young people were just at the focus of it from the beginning. And yeah, I mean, we were so lucky to choose the Wayfinder experience, because then I started doing interviews with all these young people, and I was like, oh, they're so smart.
They're incredible.
They're like natural performers, natural writers, natural, like, just speakers, actors, whatever it is, even if, they sort of identify as like socially awkward. I'm like, I don't see that.
No, Dexter could narrate any documentary. Just put him on a mic and let him go.
I learned so much about myself from just this process of seeing and witnessing people just be so honest and vulnerable. So yeah, it was like a documentary filmmaker's dream to stumble upon all these amazing people who were going through so much, and like, but that's the teenage experience and why that's so interesting. And, there's just so much going on a psychological level, and to pair that with fantasy is, that's the key. So it was all there, and just being able to identify all those pieces and bring it together and being open to learning was huge.
Yeah, this was my maternal instincts have long since passed, but this was the first time in a long time where I was like, you know what? Maybe kids aren't so bad. Like, I take one of these. Like, these, if I was going to have a kid, I would want someone like these kids, because they're super smart and super funny, and like
thoughtful.
I feel like I'm going to be quoting them. Like, at one point, Cloud said, "I love meeting new people when I'm prepared to," and I've never related to anything more in my life. I'm like, yes, agreed.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that makes Wayfinder, and I'm sure there are other camps that do similar things, that is maybe different from tennis camp or something else, is like how...
Sorry, tennis. Sorry, big tennis. Sorry.
This whole thing is just going to be us shitting on tennis camp.
I went to tennis camp, and it wasn't that fun. I had a horrible time.
But is it
just kidding to all my old tennis coaches out there.
But, those other camps, you can't really say like, well, here are my two biggest challenges right now. It's that I have a crush on this camper and I'm terrified of ticks. And now I get to work those two things out in this like heightened fantasy reality where I can like decide how to, you know what I mean? Like work through those things. I don't know that you can do that with a tennis ball at tennis camp. And you see, you see how these kids grow, and it's only a week that they're there. And it's leaps and bounds. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, LARP is just social training, I think, is the secret. Yeah. And like, right, it's big and fun and magical, and it should remain all of those things, and it does remain all of those things. Like, I still have transformative LARP experiences where I'm like, wow, this was deep and powerful, and like, now I have a new friend for life, or now I know this new thing about myself, or like, something in me has changed, and this isn't the same as it used to be. I'm not like LARP in general, but whatever it may be. But like, at its core, one of the hardest things to find, based on, my own experience and also what people have said, is like rules to interacting with other human beings. Like that doesn't exist. But then all of a sudden in a LARP, it does. Because, right, like we do a lot of improv theater stuff where you're learning the rules of improv. We do a lot of like active status work where it's like, how would you interact with a king? How would you interact with a peasant? How would you interact with a king who was trying to hide in your basement so a peasant would cut their head off? And like doing those sorts of things, and like having scenes, right, where like it's important that there's no audience because everybody's doing it. So if you do something goofy, everybody's involved in it instead of kind of watching you. And I do think, right, like it is social training, problem solving training, like all of those things baked in. And importantly, there are edge LARPs out there that are doing really cool work. But importantly, it's not the focus of the game. It's the backing, and it's the skills that are just built by doing it. And not even in a way where I'm like, it's important because we're tricking them into doing it. Like, important because those are really intimidating things to just try and build. Right? You're like, I'm going to learn to be funny. Like,
right. And emotional regulation at that time of life is nearly impossible. And
at that time of life.
Well, in general, but especially then. I like the highest compliment I think I can give just the documentary and the way it showed what the camp does, and therefore the camp itself, is that I feel like my life would have been massively changed by attending a camp like this, right? Like, these kids have better boundaries than most of my family members. Like, it's really beautiful to watch them articulate so clearly what they need in each moment. Like, when Abby is explaining to the whole group of campers, like, you know, I have this feeding tube, I have, you know, these things, please don't unplug it. Very directly, not like apologetic, just very like, this is what I need. We're going to have a good time. Cool. Done. Like, it's just so impressive to see, you know, because you know that it's the kids themselves being that impressive, but it's also the structure that's built around them that allows them to be that version of themselves.
Yeah. And we do a lot of active work around that. Like, we do trust exercises where you just walk around and you say no to everything, or do like active boundary building stuff.
Yeah.
And we tried to work in like, how do we include consent culture and enthusiastic consent culture building in this without it either being tacky after school special or being something that 11-year-olds are like, why would I care about this? You have to walk that line, but like allowing for that kind of boundary building, allowing for that kind of space setting is really key to that. As those conversations have advanced, that stuff has become more and more present in the work that we're doing. And I think that, like, I don't know, we talk about this a lot at camp, right? If the kids come and they have a magical transformative experience, that's amazing. And we have done a great job. If a kid comes and they don't want to engage in anything, and we let them make some choices about what they do, and they hit some people with swords, and they don't care about any of the emotional stuff, and they go home, and they're like, that was fun, but that wasn't for me. Amazing. We've done a great job, like, able to make a choice. And like, you build the person you're going to be in those moments as much as you do in the moments of rigorous transformation.
And when you guys do such a good job, like, Jody, it kind of speaks to what you're saying in the beginning about what you mentioned of that you had never sort of seen a safe, quote unquote, safe space, but in a sort of a real expansive way rather than a derogatory way. And it's so interesting how in culture these days, like, sort of talks about safety and boundaries can have this like, like feeling to it. But what the Wayfinder experience and just what I witnessed there, and look, like, the crew and I did like trust workshops too, and sort of really tried to get involved with encouragement from the camp, tried to get involved in those workshops and experience what the kids were experiencing. Like, what I think is not talked about enough is sort of the idea of, if you build in that safety and you create the mechanisms for it, what's on the other side is like so much fun and freedom. And like, it's kind of the idea of like setting a boundary. You're saying no to something so you can say yes to something else.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's talked enough about in our culture. And it's just like, no, we're just going to say no. And it's going to be no.
Right.
And therefore it's no. But like, what's on the other side of it is so exciting and human. And, you know, there's so much possibility. And, you know, in this case, like, it's a classic improv. Like, you need to, the Wayfinder experience teaches how to build trust with others, how to feel trust of others too. Like, right, it goes both ways in order for there to be true play. And like, how can then we play super hard and make it what we all want it to be and have the most fun, even if that's not always the goal. But, you know, it's like, we only talk so much about the safety setting, but it should be holistic. So I think the Wayfinder experience does that so well. And I think that's what you witness in the film is like, oh, all these young people feel good, feel safe. And so then they can go explore.
And they can take risks, right? And they can process emotions that might be too scary to do in real life. Like, there's so many really beautiful parallels drawn between the real life circumstances of these kids and the sort of roles they take on in the LARP, the transformative, you know, moments they have during the gameplay. Like, what you're saying is so true that, like, once you establish those rules for safety, you actually can take more risk and you can do things that are more scary because you know that the bottom's not going to drop out. Like, you have rules that will be followed. So.
Yeah. And we've moved away from using the phrase safe space in our work, because obviously you can't promise anybody safety.
Right.
And we generally use the phrase brave space, with the idea being, right, hey, like, we can't promise safety, but we can promise process. We can promise investment. We can promise all these things, which is how we really build safety, right? Because safety doesn't mean nothing bad ever happens. It means that we're held when it does. But when you offer a safe space, like, the idea became, how do we remove all this? And so, like, we do a lot of that. And then it's getting kids to trust that that is really what is going to be provided, which is difficult, and for fair reason, right? Like, kids don't get that. Kid-led spaces are hard to come by. From some of the conversations I have with parents, it's clear that there's a lot of spaces where, like, communication and needs around anything that requires adjustment can be difficult to find. And, like, this isn't to, again, like, I don't want to come out here and be like, and that means that everybody else is doing a bad job and we're doing a good job. Like, it's easy for people to fall through the cracks, and it's easy for these things to happen, even if everyone is doing their best.
Well, yeah. I don't think it's about, some people are doing a bad job, but I don't think it's necessarily about that so much as, like, this documentary and what's happening at Wayfinder is, like, it's like a model that it's easy to look at it and see how many skills you can take, hopefully, you know what I mean, and bring into. I'm thinking about two things at the same time, and I just want to get this out because I've been thinking about it since you started talking about improv more generally. Is that someone who I work with and I'm good friends with Jody too is Chris Gethard, who's a comedian, but he started out as an improviser. He's, like, one of the best out there, and he has recently started a branch of a mental health nonprofit, and Laughing Together specifically brings improvisers into schools to teach kids and also teachers improv skills. And the point is not so that they're really good at improv. It's so that they're better at communicating with each other and feeling safe in the classroom to answer questions that they're not sure of and ask questions that they, may have been embarrassed to ask before, and, like, to give them actual concrete skills. And I think that, and there's research that fully backs up that it is useful and productive and helpful.
Yeah. I mean, when I moved to Rhode Island, I did a year of AmeriCorps, and I have complicated feelings about that. But one of the things that we did was I worked with, like, 5 and 6 year olds, and we developed play-based lesson plans, right? And one of those play-based lesson plans that we did was we just stole the game props. And it was so delightful. It's true that those types of skills, like, we were working with a specific age group, and what we were trying to do was just, like, imagination and play. But then there's also negotiation and boundaries and like, allowing the other person their expansiveness to, I mean, it's the classic, like, yes and, but, like, let the other person's story be respected and, worked with and elaborated on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know about you guys, but, like, I really wasn't taught that so explicitly growing up.
It was a lot of my, like, I started going to Wayfinder when I was 13, and I'd been to just about every camp under the sun. Before then, I'd gone to basketball camp and baseball camp and 1 week of magician camp. I didn't go back after a day because I couldn't figure out how to do the coin drop trick. So I was I'm not qualified for this. This is embarrassing that I can't do this. Don't send me back there. I spent the week sitting in my mom's office. But and I started going to Wayfinder at 13, which, like, isn't really an age that you need that level of childcare.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
And, like, but I was like, this is the thing. And, like, I don't know, I just changed schools. I did not have a lot of friends. And, like, I was given actively the tools and the roadmap and the space to reinvent myself and to create a new person. And I've continued to be provided with that through this work and through the things there. It's not for nothing that you're given, 6 hours in a week where it's like, hey, look at a different way that you could be, tend to be that way, and don't have any consequences because you do that.
Yeah.
Kids going through that, people going through that, any kind of role playing where you're going through that is identity construction, and it will create introspection and will create, like, the chance to evaluate and to see new things and to try on new things without stakes in a way that like it's just so hard to find. Even now, culturally, where a lot of these things have come very far from space they were when we were growing up, perhaps.
Yeah, they didn't let me do that at cheerleading camp, which is where I was at 13.
Right. I went to basketball camp at 6 or 7, and somebody was like, hey, just so you know, you got your gay ear pierced. And you can't wear a piercing at basketball camp because it'll hurt you. And I was like, never heard anybody say gay in a negative before, so let's lose the earring problem. I don't know, even now, it's just like, when in your day to day, if not in a structured space, when is it possible to be like, actually, I'm someone else today. Right. Actually, I'm this way. Actually, I'm the funny one. I'm the brave one. I'm the traitor. I'm going to yell at my friends, like whatever it is, you get the chance to do this and have it be warmly received. And like, then when inevitably some of those moments or parallel moments come up in life, you've got a comfort. You actually have practiced this. You have this experience to draw on.
One of the kids in the documentary, there's a moment where she's a little more antagonistic maybe than the rest of the crew would prefer. But the way that the counselors and the other kids around her kind of like, it's like they kind of, you know, when you're like, they teach you if you get pulled out in a riptide, you're not supposed to swim against the current. You're just supposed to go with it.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what happens. And I just think of how helpful I would hope that would be for her in another setting to remember that like, oh, I messed up in this instance and I wasn't punished and like I was still cared for and I wasn't like ostracized and you know, I don't want to give anything away, but like we found, you know, the people around me who care about me found a way to like highlight the good parts of that decision that I made, and it's really beautiful and it's something you don't see very often, and I thought that was really remarkable, and it speaks to what you're saying, Judd.
It's so interesting too how the film has sort of been an extension or the film coming out in festivals and doing some other public screenings, how that experience, we've been able to invite the participants in the film and they've been able to come to screenings and sort of witness other people witnessing them from a few years ago. But that experience of the film coming out has been, I don't know how one would even describe it, like an extension of the story that we witnessed in the documentary, if you will, like an extension of the Wayfinder space. I'm looking at your box, Judd, because I'm like, is that okay to say? Because like in those more difficult moments that you see in the film that, you know, these people are going through, that then they get to witness that back and see how these strangers in a movie theater at, you know, whatever festival, how they react. And then also people coming to ask them questions about how was that moment for you when you were 11 and you were going through a hard time? And what about you? What about like when you were 15 and you're like, and they're like, oh, well, I'm 13 now and I'm 17 now. And that was hard back then, but now I have perspective. So what the Wayfinder experience is able to do and the counselors are able to do in terms of holding, you know, a tough experience for a kid. And then that has sort of rippled out with the film and the times we've gotten to be with audiences. And just seeing how that is contagious or actually just deeply human and helps remind us of how to witness people with just empathy and be like, yeah, that was really hard what you're going through, but man, thank you for sharing that. So that's been cool to see them. It's very meta to see the documentary kids witness a documentary and witness them being in the documentary. Yeah. So it's cool.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
I was just going to say that exact same thing.
Because that's one of the things that I had been wondering is the participants and their sort of feelings about this after the fact and seeing themselves and being in it. But you basically just answered that. But I love the idea of them witnessing other people's sort of warmth towards them, because that is another layer of a lesson of how to have empathy for someone else, is to witness it being given to you in this weird third person way. Like the kid that we're talking about that had sort of a more difficult time, like she was one of the people that I actually related to the most.
Totally.
100%. In some of those moments.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said that.
Yeah. And Andrea and I were talking before you guys got here about how interesting it is to notice that empathy that you're having for a child that you don't know going through something that then if you really let it, you can then extend kind of to yourself.
Right.
As that type of child.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's so real. And I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that's like in my wildest dreams what would happen.
Yeah. Well, give Andrea credit for that one, because I think that's what she was trying to say to me earlier and I just kind of stole it. But
no, I love that. Like, all I want from the film is actually for people to, of course, know about the Wayfinder experience, but sort of on a more like human level, like for people to have more grace and understanding for themselves, that they go through transformation, that we have all been through transformation. And maybe the teenage years are sort of the first very raw transformation we go through, but we go through that cycle again and again and again through life. And it's not, unfortunately, it's not the last, but also fortunately, it's not the last. But transformation's really hard.
Yeah.
And it's gnarly as hell, but it's kind of, our brains are built for neuroplasticity, and like we can grow, and it's good for us to grow. And obviously we need to grow as a society and keep that transformation coming. That only comes on an individual level. But I'm always so inspired by Judd. I wish we had put this in the film, but Judd had said, and says many times, that, it's not about the young people, the kids coming back to Wayfinder to be in this special space. The work is for them having witnessed and been a part of a really special place to make those special places elsewhere and to just keep growing that and pushing it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad you could see and get in commune with your younger self.
I mean, there's so many different examples of that at different ages, right? When Dexter feels rejected and he starts literally physically running, I wrote down in my notes, his emotions are on the outside right now because it's so like, there's so much emotional agitation going on in him that he has to physically like run. And I related super hard to that moment. And it was just, there's so many different examples of ways of navigating and working through different emotions by each of the different kids. So
I think really important, and Carina regularly shrugs off any responsibility for this. And it's just like
Jersey.
It's all the camp. It's a very fun time. Carina and I being in these and being like, it's you. It's like, but I think that like that work is happening. Kids are doing that transformation is happening, and we're doing that. But like finding ways to be able to show it in ways that resonate for people, and being able to find those moments resonate, and also that allow the kids to see it and not feel exposed, to feel included, to feel well represented, and like to engage with that it's a very impressive work of art. And like, I feel very held in it from like the very first moments. Like I was like, when is this movie going to get me? And in the moment where Dexter says, can I do a narrator voice? And it like does it, which is like 5 seconds into the movie. I was like, oh, they have nailed us.
Yeah.
It is a large thing to come into a space that you are not a part of.
Yeah.
To make it, to like keep it feeling comfortable, to observe and represent that space, and to do it in a way where people arrive at the end feeling happy about it. And like LARP, even though it's having a moment where a lot more people are engaging it, still LARP in media, for understandable reasons, usually is shown being pretty goofy.
Right.
And like really watching this, it feels the way to see, it feels the way to play, like the movie is showing the goofiness, but is also treating it with the respect and the space that it's actually taking up in all of our lives. And so like, as much as a lot of these things always focus on us and the work we're doing, which thank you everyone, just the artistry, the effort, the like active creation that Carina and the whole team have done here is really something that I am in awe of, and like feel very held and seen and shown in an honest way that it's like hard to achieve.
Yeah. It feels that way from the outside. So it's it's so nice to hear that that's the experience you had, you know, in the middle of it all. It's also, Jody, were you going to say something related?
I was going to say about probably what you're going to say, which is that sense of it being taken seriously to me was done by how beautiful and intentional the filmmaking was.
It's gorgeous. It's so beautiful to watch.
The sort of the color transitions from when they're in the play to when they're out of the play, the widescreen versus the different like aspect ratios. Like I mean, I teach visual art, so obviously I'm going to notice that stuff. But from one of the very first shots, it might even be the first shot of the sky, and there's like a cutout that almost looks like a bird in the sky. I don't know if that was intentional, but to me that was a bird. From that very first shot, it was like, oh, I'm in good hands. Like the visuals were so intentionally crafted to give that sense of seriousness to the play, but then also to subtly, like almost subconsciously indicate where you are in the story, whether you're in fantasy or whether you're in like a real moment. So sorry, Andrea, if that was what you were going to say and I just took it.
No, it is what I was going to say, but more to cue you up because, you know,
well, that's my thing.
I was going to say Jody tends to handle the visual and I tend to handle the narrative as the way we've sort of shaken out here. But even me, you know, dummy with an English degree, even I could tell it was beautiful. So that's
well, that means so much because, you know, so much thought and painstaking setup and a lot of lifting of gear and getting the whole team places. And, you know, there's a lot of thought. So even you just mentioning that first shot, Jody, I could cry because I'm just like, so much thought went into that. So many, you know, tense creative conversations were had about getting, so just the fact that you appreciate the details.
I've got 20 more images of shots in my head. But yeah.
And I have to say the narrator, Dexter saying, can I do it in a narrator's voice, was so, one of our editors, Rebecca Adorno, who is just an absolute genius, like a renowned award-winning documentary filmmaker and editor, and just like a gem of a human being who is so a Wayfinder kid. That was all Rebecca coming in, sort of being like, wait, we need to like signal to people in some way where this is going. And I think I have a really good way of doing it. And it was just like one shot and done. And it was like, oh, Rebecca gets it. And that was like, you know, just even for my, you know, I think a lot of artists and just a lot of, I mean, people, it doesn't even have to be artists, just human beings, like the work you end up doing is sort of perhaps the work that you needed as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
That's something that really helped fuel me during this whole process was like, right, my teenage self who would just, you know, when I heard about the Wayfinder experience, like, oh, I probably would have liked to go to that camp. But then finding other people to collaborate with and seeing them go wide-eyed over this camp and over all these young people's experiences and start to relate and be like, oh yeah, I know exactly what Dexter's talking about. I know exactly what Abby's talking about. And they're not even really talking about it, but I see that and seeing the other creatives who are on this, and my co-director Alex and Rebecca and our DP Pete, all of our DPs like Madeline, Mike, everyone, our producer Jen and Katie, like everyone just got it. And that was like really very special for me, even just for me, like, oh, does anyone else see what I see in this place? And or are we just all nerds? And it's like, oh no, wait, actually we're all nerds, and that's the greatest thing ever.
When they're pulling into the camp, it was the two girls whose names are escaping me at the moment.
Miranda and Kate.
Thank you. And I don't remember which one of it was, but they went, yay, nerds. And I was like, yeah.
Also, just like the level to which the whole crew became, like, you guys very much were like, we're going to be journalistic about this and we're going to stay over here and you guys are over there in a very respectful way, not in a way that felt like bad. But the campers, I mean, I've been trying to get Carina to play an adventure game. The campers were just like we were like, yeah, you should come by and talk to them and introduce yourselves and let them ask any questions. And they were like so quickly to like, you know, just who are you as a person? And like inviting people in and trying to get them to come and join. And like by the end, like, I don't know, it felt like just another extension of it. And like in a lot of ways, right, like running back-to-back weeks of camp, it feels like you're running like fantasy week and then sci-fi week and the theme of it. And in a lot of ways that just felt like documentary week. And it became like a part of the fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah, in a way that like it could have, as you was said, it could have gone so many other ways.
Oh,
but, like,
yeah, that's best case scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not luck on either side of that.
Yeah. It's hard. I liked what you said before, Judd, about like what it takes to keep a space comfortable. Because it's like there's a lot of work in that. And even like, you know, as Judd was just saying, like I come from a more traditional journalism background. Like I went to journalism school. I mainly have worked on like investigative journalism pieces. Like I've done things for National Geographic about like criminal black markets. I worked at Vice on HBO for a long time, did a lot of like investigations and more, like again, journalistic pieces. And you know, I was sort of taught in school to keep that objectivity and to sort of create that distance. But then it just didn't work. Like it wasn't working when we were there. Like you just kind of, if a kid asks you like, so what's your favorite color? Or like, what'd you eat for breakfast? Or like, who hurt you when you were a kid? You're just like, like, and then it really was like a very challenging process in like that the journalistic way. Cause I was like, wait, all the things I've learned, they're not really serving me here. And it made me question, what is that objectivity? What is that distance actually doing? And I kind of came to the conclusion, although it's really helpful on a lot of other projects, like, I'm like, well, to act like I don't care about these kids is actually just totally bogus and is not coming to service in this project. So I really had to throw all of my sort of quote unquote, like traditional training, like out the window and just be like, okay, I just need to be a human first, which is actually how I should always be leading my life. You know, I'm a human first and a filmmaker second.
Still have not played an adventure game, but we will get you.
Yeah.
doesn't sound like.
I'm too scared. I have to go through more therapy first.
That's how I feel for sure. I think it's amazing. I get not made fun of. I don't know what the word is, but like I at this point almost exclusively listen to like actual play podcasts, D&D podcasts. I've never played D&D. I've never LARPed. But it is like a real joy in my life to hear other people do it. So like even just watching the documentary, it was really like, So
have you heard us mentioned on your actual plays?
Yeah, I mean all the time.
Oh sure. Oh yeah. Brennan Mulligan, another of our impressive staff members.
This is just a question that I keep thinking about, and I haven't found a good place to ask it, so I'm just going to ask it now. Which is, what was casting like? How did that work with did you have literally a documentary week where it was like these are the kids whose caregivers signed off and who were interested? Like how did that happen?
Probably 4 or 5 kids in that week who still never signed off on them being in the documentary and are not in the documentary for that reason.
That's fascinating.
It was
what a challenge.
I know. That's incredible.
Probably more of a Carina question. Yeah. I would say that you handled it very gracefully and graciously and with care. Like carefully is the wrong word, but with a lot of care and compassion for the parents and the kids, and like made yourself really accountable and present and like did all that. But yeah, as far as the process, Carina could probably speak better to that.
Thanks, Judd. So it kind of worked out. I knew I wanted to do the film. I knew I wanted to do about Wayfinder, Judd and Corey and Trina and Janet all said yes. All the leaders of the Wayfinder experience said yes. And then it was 2020. So I just started sitting in on these adventure games that were being played virtually, which I would highly recommend as an intro to LARP, because you have no idea what's happening, but you just see all these kids just like standing in their kitchen alone with like a full mask and like ghoul and ghost costumes.
Amazing.
It was amazing as I was like withering away in lockdown. And what first happened was that I remember Dexter was on one of those calls, and Dexter was just asking the most amazing questions about what we were doing, what was the purpose of it. And I could just tell, and everyone could tell, that it was like so genuine. And the questions were just like, he really wanted to understand what was going on. And I was like, yeah, those are great questions. Like, why are icebreakers breaking the ice? Like, how does this help to serve us? Like, why getting to know my favorite color? How would I actually get to know you better that way? I was like, damn, these are really great questions. This kid is amazing. And I remember he must have been like 13 or 14. He might have been 13 at the time, which is wild. Yeah, because he's 17 now. So I was just so enamored by how articulate he was. And so that, I don't remember much from sort of that reach out process to the family, but I've become close with his parents. And his mom was just reminding me recently, she was like, oh yeah, we also didn't answer you for a very long time. Like, we really were like, this is something we would never do. But just once we got on the phone once and we sort of just connected as people, yeah, they were in. And also on those calls was Abby. And I remember, so Abby in the film is battling some medical issues. And at the time when I met Abby in 2020, Abby had not gone through that quite yet. And I just remember like Abby was just like glowing off the screen, was just so sweet and kind, and just had this like warmth to them. And I remember thinking like, man, I want to get this kid in the documentary, but I don't really know how. And then it wasn't until we started filming principal photography 2 years later that Abby was going through all the medical issues, and it felt like a way in, and a way to be like, oh, they're like sort of battling something concrete. And then Cloud, our youngest in there, who actually now goes by the name Eli. So I'm going to refer to Cloud as Eli. But Eli, we didn't meet Eli until the week before we started filming principal photography. So I was freaking out because I was like, we don't have another person. We need another person. Need another person. And then Eli's parents finally emailed me back, and we just did a Zoom call. And it was like, I'm just going to shout out, it was like watching the comedian from Whose Line Is It Anyway, Colin Mockery, as a young person, just buzzing on, pinballing off the screen. And I'm saying Colin Mockery because I know Eli loves Colin. So I'm like a young Colin Mockery. It was just like this stand-up act that was both hilarious and biting and just like true and drawing me in. I was like, I'm sorry, you're how old? Oh, 11? Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. So I didn't know much about Eli's actual story at the time, and sort of the number of schools they had been to since the pandemic and their struggle with that. But I was just like, you know what? Charisma is about 500%. So I'm down. One of our executive producers, Nicole Stott, said this, and she was saying, always urging us, like, you need to look for people who have the potential for transformation. And that is something that I carry with me. Like, you start in one place and you have to end in a very different place. So like, who could that be? And obviously in documentary, you can never really predict that. But so what does that break down to? That breaks down to someone who is up against an obstacle and is trying, even if they don't know it or not, they're trying to overcome it. Will they actually do it? We don't know. And then so the other half of that is luck. Just in terms of like, will their story be entertaining to watch? And that's just luck and life playing out. But, other than that, we're looking for charisma, like emotional intelligence, sort of like being able to articulate your own story and what you're going through at the time. Obviously, a willingness from the family and the kid to be on camera and for them to understand what this is going to be like. And then honestly, also kids who could articulate their boundaries and could tell us no, and could tell us, maybe this is too much, because it's really overwhelming being followed by a camera crew at all times and being like, how are you feeling now? And this really key developmental part of your life that you don't know is actually like, like your brain is clay and you're just getting it molded right now. We're just going to film all of it.
Well,
so to make sure that they
no
can,
when you're a kid in general to
so
adults,
hard.
But not if you went apparently to Wayfinder and be building these skills you know, all along. Like, it really, I keep thinking of, like, that's the kind of stuff, Carina, that I don't think you could have known really going into it, that, like, oh, if I film these kids at this camp, they're already set up in a way to be, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, I think so much, honestly, so much credit needs to be given to the parents, like in terms of what we call like quote unquote access, or just like being and access in terms of like the characters or the participants saying yes to being in the film, but then also just the types of, you know, people we were going to film. Like, the parents are the ones who have all set up their kids in this way. That the parents, right. I wish, like, one thing I always wanted to do with the film, I was like, the parents, all adults should just be like Charlie Brown characters. Should just like be like rah, 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 on the side. Like, it's all focused on the kids. But I wish, like, the parents and the counselors are some of the most interesting people I'd ever met, some of the kindest people I'd ever met, and who are the ones being like, oh yeah, my kid should go to a LARPing camp. Right, oh yeah, right. Like, I do need to give my kid a little more time. I do, like, they are really intelligent, and actually they're their own specific, unique human being I've never seen before, but I'm not afraid of the unknown, and I'm just going to allow them to grow to be exactly what they want themselves to be. So the parents are just incredible, and I wish they could be in it more, just for the world to know them, but then it wouldn't be, you know, in service for the kids' stories. But yeah, the parents have helped create that space from the beginning, and then they went out to go seek the Wayfinder experience. Except in the case of Abby found the Wayfinder experience on their own.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Judd, how long has the camp been a camp?
So Wayfinder started in 2001, was officially formed. There was another program that it grew off of called Adventure Game Theater, which started in 1986. So the adventure game is older than Magic the Gathering.
That sounds like an important point that you've made a few times.
It's a little nerd claim to fame there. But Wayfinder has been running camps every summer since 2002 was the first summer. And in 2020, right, we ran 3 weeks of digital camp, which was really good, actually.
That's cool.
Like, it was very different.
Yeah.
Of course, but it went pretty well. So yeah, for what's that, 23 years?
I'm so bad at math. Does that mean, are there kids whose parents went through either the adventure
have second generation kids? Yes.
That rules. Wow. That's so cool.
We have some of the people who were like the staff when I was a kid. Their kids are now my campers.
That's amazing.
It's really magical, and it's like it's really funny. We had one who was coming, and we were like being very conscious about like, we got to make sure we're not like let this kid set their level of that and not like trotting them out. And then like they got there and they just kept going to our staff and being like, my mom used to own this kid.
That's amazing.
But no, yeah. So like, it is this really special thing that has just been able to continue. And I think like, I don't know, we're continuing to grow. Things are going well. Like, very excited about where we are headed, organizationally.
Ooh.
And like, the goal continues to be, right, like, how do we provide this for them? But like, we get maybe 4 weeks in a summer.
Right.
Right? Like, that's what you get with a kid in a given year. And that's if they were to come to all of our weeks of overnight.
Right.
If most of our kids come for like 4 or 5 years, that could mean that we see this kid a total of 4 or 5 weeks, right? Yeah. So like, you have to be very conscious of like, this week can't be the point. We can't be building this up to be the best week of their year or the best of their life.
That's such a good point.
We have to be preparing them for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
Or else what are we doing here? And like, with that, right, like, so these kids, they grow up and they do amazing things, and it's always so moving when it is this space that has done that for them, that has allowed them those things, where they credit us with that. And obviously there's endless other people's work, parents, educators who are going into that. But like knowing that this is awakening that in people who are able to go out and create that, like, it's everything.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and that's sort of what I meant when I said, like, this would have been life-changing for me. It's not the week itself that I was referring to.
right.
You know, it's all the skills I would have taken home with me to use the rest of the year. Right.
Yeah.
I'd be so good at D&D now. If I'd had it. That's all I think about, you know. I know it's not the same thing.
That's pretty much the same thing. Another of our impressive alumnus is Max Friedlich, whose play Job was just on Broadway. But Max is a friend, a good friend, and it was talking about, like, we, you know, I've talked to a lot of people, like, how have you used LARP in your life? How have you used LARP in your life? And it's very easy to see with a lot of people, right? Like, Brennan runs D&D, and, like, yeah, it's really clear how that works. But, like, Max just talked about being in an interview where he felt nervous and just going, oh, I'm just going to play a character who's myself but not nervous. And, like, the little skills that it gives you to be like, right, actually, like, we're just having a status interaction. This is just an improv scene. And the point of this improv scene is interview. The point of this improv scene is, like, talk about my thing. And I think it just demystifies a lot of that in a way that, like, really and truly, like, it's amazing that we can do this skill building in a fun and magical way. But, like, I have no interest in running our, like, apprenticeship program, our camp, to teach people the skills in order to be able to come and work at our camp. And instead, like, what do you want to do with your life?
Yeah.
How can what we're doing here serve you in that? And yeah, like, when people ask me how they can be better at working at summer camp, I tell them to go work at a restaurant. Because, like, just like your head's on a swivel, you have to manage things. And also, like, most jobs don't give you this that restaurants do, is that at the end of your shift, the stress is gone.
I know.
And, like, not that none of it matters at camp, but the kids go home and you have to be able to move on from whatever it was of your life. And, like, where else do you learn? That's a really
good point.
Service.
Yeah.
I just keep thinking about, again, I'm sorry for forgetting names, but Queen, I know their name in the game, Queen Eloise, when she runs away and says, I am not your pawn. Like, that's actually a life lesson.
Yeah.
That's not just in the game. That, like, I feel like if a situation comes up in the future where they feel like they're being pressured into something, there may be some of Queen Eloise that's like, no, I'm not your pawn. No. You know? So I thought that was really beautiful.
Right, like, brains are dumb. And if you have done a thing in a game, then your brain is not able to necessarily differentiate.
Totally.
You haven't done that in real life. And so, like, you do just have a backing of experience to draw on.
Yeah. Yes. Brains are dumb. Yeah, at one point Dexter says, I think about things so much. And I was like, me too, Dexter.
I know.
Me too.
But I don't know that
like,
I could have said I have my little notebook just full of just profound things those kids have said.
I know.
Yeah, that's most of my job, is the kids saying things to me that I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to get out of your way, I guess.
I'm going to go home and think about that myself now.
Exactly.
No problem.
Yeah.
Totally. I did all this transformational work. It wasn't just...
Yeah. Then there's also stuff like a kid saying something is money and scrumptious. So, I mean, like, there's a little bit of everything in there.
Absolutely gold, yeah.
So good.
Can't make it up.
All of that, keep wanting to be like, oh, that kid was the star of the documentary, but all of them were.
Yes.
But, yeah, money and scrumptious.
Yeah.
He was at one of the film festivals, and when a reporter for the Times Union of Albany asked about Wayfinder, and this is the quote about the movie that made it in, said, and we made a meme out of it because we thought it was truly just wild. I have the quote here. Who cares, really? Who gives a shit? If it makes you happy and it doesn't hurt anyone, do it. Look like an idiot, that's what Wayfinder is for.
Oh my God, that's
We were like, oh,
perfect.
yeah, mugging.
Love it.
Perfect. That is money and scrumptious. So
yes,
I mean,
yeah.
But he's also not wrong.
Yeah.
Larping is the stupidest thing you can do, and it's so amazing and super fun and magical. And both of those things can be true, and both of those things are an important part of it. Like,
who gives a shit?
Yes. Yes. Go big or go home. Or go small. Don't go home. I like you guys.
I like you guys. That's just strangle in the scrangos.
Oh my God, I wrote that down too.
I also okay.
Time guitar people talk.
I feel like I could keep you both here forever. Shard Dorp. Okay, listeners will not know what we're talking about. Shard Dorpington. Also, Jody, something you probably don't know because I don't think you followed Judd, or maybe it's the camp. I'm not sure where this account is, but you've been highlighting camp names. It's like my favorite thing right now. There's just
the kids, the names that they come up with for their characters, and it is a point of contention in our staff pool as to how you should respond when a kid gives you an incredibly stupid name for the character. And I hold that you should say, "Great, that's fantastic." Of course, your character is named Mr. Beerworld. Shard Dorpington.
What was the one you just said?
Mr. Beerworld? There's a store around here called Beerworld, and a kid for a whole summer played in multiple games, different character named Mr. Beerworld. And it was just like,
that rules.
Sure, like if that's what you're going to do. One time they killed me. I was the god of hell, and they killed me, and they had to establish a new god of the underworld. And they were like, and now the new god of the underworld, Mr. Happy. I handed a kid my skull.
That's great.
Yeah, and it's just like, the names that kids come up with are insane. I think our greatest failing ever in our history is that we had a staff member who every single child on their team named their character Shadow, and that staff member did not change their own character's name to Shadow. But it's just like, like it makes for ridiculous scenes, and it makes specifically what it makes for is if you, and I think Brennan talked about this at some point and says it, I'm sure, more eloquently than I will. But like, if you go into the scene, if your name is Mr. Beerworld and you go into a scene that's intensely emotional and people are mourning over you and you're having this intensely powerful experience, and then one of them says, as a tear falls from their eye to your cheek, I'm going to miss you, Mr. Beerworld. It's impossible to not be pulled out of the moment a little bit. But like, I don't know, it's just a lesson. It's just another lesson you got to learn.
This documentary, everything about it feels so sincere, and we're so kind of like starved for sincerity, I think. So much so that like I think I maybe said what, Jody, when we were talking last week, where like sometimes people aim for sincere and it can feel, and I hate this word, which I said last week, cringy.
Cringe, yeah.
This doesn't feel that way at all. But you saying that thing about the name where it's like, I wonder if the lesson there then is that like, or I wonder if the hesitation to just pick a name that makes sense and fits and like proves that you're going to buy into it is like, you know what I mean? Like you pick a silly name and it gives you a little bit of distance to be like, well, we're going to see how I feel, how much I really want to buy in. And then once they are bought in and they're crying over their death scene and realize that then Mr. Beerworld has to be mourned, that is a lesson, like you said.
Yeah.
Also, I gotta be real. I think the most important lesson of a character named Mr. Beerworld is not for that kid to learn not to name their character Mr. Beerworld, but like running a LARP is an exercise in letting go of control. Because write it, you create this thing, and then everybody else actualizes it, and they do it without your vision in mind, even one bit.
Right.
So like a kid named Mr. Beerworld, the question isn't how do we get this kid to not name themselves Mr. Beerworld? It's how do we get Mr. Beerworld to feel like an integral part of our fantasy universe?
Yeah.
Like, I also love when those kids come around, a couple years later and they're like, that was wild. And now fantasy name. Right. Like, that's the challenge is how do we get them there where they're having a good time, feeling included and welcomed, even when they're trying to be like, ha ha ha, this program's a joke. And like one time we do this, we just took this from another program, it's not ours, but we do an exercise called Crossing the Line. We do it in a circle, someone steps in and they say something personal about themselves. Anybody else who it resonates with steps into the middle. We were doing this in one of our trust exercises. There was a group of like 7, 12-year-old boys, just like laughing on the sidelines. And we were like, hey, like, if you don't want to be impressed, that's fine, but either go hang out in this space a little further away or come and join the circle. And this kid comes to join the circle, and it was very clear that he was like set on, I'm going to get him. And so like we're going around the circle, and he was like, I'm a human being. Like, you know, everybody stepped in. And then like 5 minutes later, I'm not kidding, like 5 minutes later, the same kid stepped into the circle crying and was like, I've never found a place where I felt like I was seen.
Oh, my heart.
And it's like, when kids are testing boundaries, you don't have to show them this boundary is, you don't get to do that.
Right.
You can show them this boundary is, okay, fine, no problem. Like, this can contain that too.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And like those kids, right, like in moments like that, those kids are still just kids under your care who are trying to figure it out, and they're not trying to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They're just being themselves. And so like you just have to continually humble yourself and remind yourself of that. And like react in a way that allows that and expands the space. Like if you want to say, hey, this space can contain anything as long as it's anything that I like,
right?
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
But the space can contain anything, including you coming in here and being like, haha, this is dumb. Like, cool, no problem. Let's rock, kid.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you, I'm so ready.
Well, we see that in action too, when, you know, not to spoil things for people who haven't seen it, but, you know, there's something that happens where somebody misbehaves in a certain way. And the guidance from, I believe it's you, Jed, but I could be wrong, it could have been one of the other adults, is basically like, this person is welcome back or may be back, and we welcome people who are willing to grow. And it was very much like, we're not banishing this person, but they crossed a boundary. And I loved the fact that it was made it clear that it was possible for them to be absolutely welcomed back, given certain things were met, you know, because that's what it is. It's an understanding that people make a lot of mistakes or act out in certain ways as they grow and learn. And, you know, one specific moment doesn't define who they are for anyone.
Yeah. So. And especially not for
a kid.
12-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. God forbid we're all defined by things we did when we were 10 or 11.
Right.
Yeah.
Or 12 or 13 or 14. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Jody and I, who have never been to LARP camp, like,
come out to one of our adult retreats.
you do adult ones? Like, I got scared. Maybe. I just got scared.
We got 2 weeks.
I got excited.
Here, I'll send you the details.
I'll never do it.
I might.
Jody's gonna go. You can tell me all about
Give
it later.
Give me a fucking sword, man.
Oh yeah.
Give me a sword.
Carina will be there.
Carina, if you go, I'll go. Yeah, hell yeah.
If Andrea goes, I go.
There we go. But the fact that all of that comes through so clearly is such a testament to the work that, Carina, you've done. And just seeing the reviews, like, everybody, it seems like, who sees this is responding so well to it. And I hope that that's so validating. And my question then is, like, what's the goal for it? What's next for it? Are you looking for, like, I guess what I want to know is, for our listeners who are hearing this, like, what can they do to be helpful, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, it's something that documentary folks talk about quite often, but I think a lot of people sort of know that documentaries are sort of in a weird space right now. The whole industry is, and that's coming along with streaming services and sort of the change in how we watch movies and TV. But yeah, we just need people to keep talking about the film. We need people to just look it up. We need people to, like, I was like so overjoyed the other day, like, with a little post on Reddit, but I saw a Reddit post of someone being like, where can I watch the documentary We Can Be Heroes? So just, like, keep asking and, like, you know, putting it out there, like, you want to see this film. And that is always really helpful, just to get the word out. And if you haven't seen it, just posting that you want to see it is really cool. And, you know, you never know, just sort of pushing the needle in the right direction. But we're hoping that it can be more widely available sometime next year. But I think we still have a few more little film festivals here and there. And hopefully more screenings. I would love to do more school screenings. It's like the best thing ever when we get to watch it to show it to high schoolers or even sometimes middle schoolers. It's just the best because it was made for them in mind. But that being said, I also love when adults come in and say, I had no idea what to expect, and I don't know why, but I've been crying this whole time. And I'm like, your inner teenager is still there.
And now I really want to have a child.
Yeah.
And that's just as important. Yeah.
That's amazing. I think I was 3 minutes in and I messaged Judd, like, I think I'm finally ready to be a mother.
Yeah.
I think I've never thought about it before, but I think now's my time. Yeah. And then, of course, that ended as soon as the documentary was over. But for that hour and a half, for sure.
I love that. Yeah, so just keep talking about the film. Look up the Wayfinder experience. Like, go to their camp. Just get the word out. And, but that's all on like sort of a superficial level. But I hope that people who've seen the film just keep talking about just their inner teenager and sort of those experiences, because I think the more we're in touch with that, the better off we'll all be.
And then Judd, the same question for you about Wayfinder. Is there anything you want folks to?
Sure. Wayfinder, we're trying to expand our school programs. Specifically, we do a lot of programming after schools, in-school programs. We're running next summer like 18 weeks of camp in 8 weeks or something like that. 18 weeks of programming at 6 different locations.
That's very cool.
So going to grind myself to dust happily for this organization. No, that's a joke. Actually, I want to take that joke back because we've been working really hard on making sure that this isn't about burning ourselves out for the cause. And in fact is, how do we do this sustainably and consciously in a way that supports us and allows us to be people.
I like that therapy moment I just saw you do right there, where you had a negative thought, you challenged you reframed it. That was really, really good.
Yeah, and then I really would like the documentary. I think the more people see it and the more people are able to get it and to kind of feel like, how do we do something like this? That's magical and amazing. And I know I keep hammering this maybe to the point where people are like, does this guy even like LARPing? Like, it doesn't have to be LARP. And I think that like,
but it can't be tennis.
No, not tennis.
It can be anything but tennis.
Yep. I would like to add cheerleading to the list of things it can't be.
Yeah. There's 3 things you need to know about me. I love queer people, I love LARPing, and I hate tennis. No. So just like, for me, if people see on a film level, the more people who see it and find a way to, like Carina saying, access their inner teenager or create those spaces for each other or have a moment where they're able to give appreciations or do any of these things that like are so huge and practicable and terrifying at the same time. Like, that's the dream. Yeah, sure. If people want to donate to Wayfinder, tight. If people want to send their kids to Wayfinder, that's great. Those things are incredible. And I probably should be using all of these as moments for promotion, but like what we have to promote, yes, we have a camp, but what we have to promote really is, how do we build these spaces and how do we help people to build these spaces everywhere? Because the kids are the goal, Wayfinder's not the goal. Like, we're never going to be able to help every kid. So, how can we help you to help the kids?
Totally.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And also my producer in me was like, oh, this will be one of the clips I pull. And then I realized, out of context, you'll be talking about that with the Jersey.
Or do you want me to say it again without?
No, absolutely not. I'll Photoshop it back in.
I thought about that a bunch in this. I was like, every moment for this.
Every sincere moment.
Where I say, and this is the Jersey Devil for New Jersey.
Yeah.
It's really confusing.
Yeah. It makes me really happy.
That's the experience that Mr. Beer World Child had. That it's like, damn, I really committed to this.
I didn't even know. The truth is, I didn't know Mr. Beer World's name before that adventure game. He wasn't a PC on my team. I knew about it because I saw that kid standing off on his own, and I was like, adventurer, what is your friend's name? They need to come and join us. And the kid was like, Mr. Beer World.
That's Mr. Beer World.
Mr. Beer World. And actually, like, that moment, now it's great for me to sit here and be high-minded and be like, oh, it's a moment to teach us how to let kids take control. In that moment, I was like, who let this kid
who let this happen?
But, like, I don't know, you have those experiences, and no matter what ridiculous things happen, the magic works, the kids have transformation, and you're like, oh, okay, like, I'm attaching a lot of sensibility and control that doesn't matter. And, like, it's hard to be reminded that.
Yeah.
That rules, so.
Well said.
Okay, so last question. Where can folks find the camp, the doc, both of you? Where should they go to keep up with everything?
Start with the camp.
You can follow Wayfinder. Our website is wayfinderexperience.com. Come on over, see the cool events we have going on. You can also follow us on Instagram. We do a lot of engagement there at Wayfinder EXP. You can follow me at LARP Queen with KWEEN. I occasionally say earnest things. Mostly I make jokes about LARPing. Please reach out. Please come play.
And then you can follow updates about the documentary on Instagram at We Can Be Heroes Doc. And then I'm on Instagram too, although I don't like it. But yeah, I'm at Carina.Mia.
That means that you're healthy.
I'm speaking of being mentally healthy and having a healthy relationship with the internet. If you'd like to bet on the name of my next child, in April, currently have a betting pool going, and right now a $10 bet could win you $500.
Well, it's going to be Mr. Beer World, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Mr. Beer World's got to be on the list.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Congrats on the second one on the way.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Thank you. Very exciting.
The important, the human part. That's the important part.
Mr. Beer World.
This is my kids. Stay it in Mr. Beer World. Two kings in their own right.
That's right. That's beautiful. All right. I really could keep you both here forever. This has been such a joy. I mean, Jody and I really love We Can Be Heroes so much. I'm so glad, selfishly, that we've gotten to watch it and to talk to you both.
Yeah.
And all that stuff will be in the show notes, listeners. And we will keep everybody posted on the comings and goings. Comings and goings of a document? That's not right.
Yeah, that works. That works. Own it.
You know what I'm going to
online, everyone, and demand to see We Can Be Heroes. Make it a big thing. Follow them on Instagram so they have a bunch of followers, and the people who make choices will say this is profitable and rubber stamp it and put it on the internet so you can see it.
Hell yeah.
Demand.
Jersey forever.
Jersey forever.
Jersey forever.
Well, that was, I feel like we say this after every interview. That was the best.
That was a delight. Yes. A fucking delight. Love them both so much.
Yeah.
One of the sort of surprising things about doing this podcast is how much recently we've been able to gush to the actual filmmakers about the work that we love. Like, it's one thing to say it on a podcast to our listeners and to each other, but to be able to express that to the people who, especially these small documentaries that are kind of like passion projects and are still trying to find their way or find distribution, like, it's just so nice to be able to say that while looking at the person who put all this work into it. So
yeah, absolutely. And you can tell that the people we've talked to anyway have really put their hearts into the projects they're making, and so it is nice to be able to recognize that.
Definitely.
Like I said at the top, and like we just said at the end here, follow, support, make noise. If you're a blogger or podcaster, like,
get the word out. I mean, this is just such a heartfelt, beautiful piece of work that reminds me, even though it's a different topic, a little bit of how much like love and heart I felt like was in. Can I do an episode without bringing up Sav Rogers? No, apparently not. But the sort of one of the things that we talked about with Sav was how things are hard right now. Things are always hard, but things are really hard right now for a lot of people in certain communities. And it is really important to kind of like have moments of beauty and hope and lift each other up and celebrate the bravery of especially like the kids in this documentary. And bravery, hold on. No, so I don't know if this will make the podcast, but at one point Judd said that when they were on set, I believe, Abby, they created a swear jar sort of situation where every time someone called Abby brave, that they had to put money in the swear jar. Right. So I think brave is an accurate word because they're putting themselves out there on film, but they're not brave for being who they are. Right. They're just great kids.
Who they are, yeah.
But, being willing
I'm not afraid to say it's fucking brave to let a camera crew follow you.
That's what I mean. It's like, to have that focus on you as a young person, as a teenager, I would never have been able to do that. So that's what I mean by brave, Abby. Don't come for me if you listen to this. Don't come for me. So yeah, that will be our last doc, at least for a week. We will talk about January coming up.
We try to move on from
docs. I know, but
and...
they're so good. So yeah, but next week we're going to do a little, we're not taking the week off because we did that for Thanksgiving and we're not slackers around here. But we are going to take a moment to look back, not a clip show. We don't do those, mainly because it's a lot of freaking work.
Yeah, people think that's what you do.
I know.
To save work, it's a lot of work.
So much work. Oh my God. For you, not me. But no, we're going to do a little best of 2024 next week. We're going to come up with 3 to 5, not just movies and TV, but pop culture generally, that were sort of the standouts for us for the last year. We're going to try to stay away from stuff we've covered on the pod, throw some new things in there for y'all if you're sitting home with the family and you need to get away and watch something else. We'll give you some more options for things to find or listen to or read. Yeah, well, you'll do that.
I'm not a fucking nerd.
No, it's just the books that I read, literally no one wants to read them. But yeah, so that's next week. That'll come out on New Year's Day. So we'll have our look back. And then we shall see.
We'll let
surprises.
You know. Yeah, we'll let you know next week what the plan is. I'll also say we have a really fun guest, not a filmmaker, but someone who Jody, I think, is going to fit right in with the vibe here.
What, because she's from North Jersey and her favorite diner is the one where my parents went on their first date? Is that why?
Why do I keep doing this to myself?
I don't know why you do this. Yeah, because literally all I want to talk to her about is the Saddlebrook Diner. It's like where my parents went on their first date.
I don't know why I keep doing this to myself.
I don't either. Where are all the South Jersey people? Oh, that's right. There aren't that many. This is the last podcast we ever do. But yeah, I'm excited for our guests next week just to kind of shoot the shit and talk about pop culture and stuff that they're into. Also, bring a little bit of a different perspective. And yeah, that'll be fun. And then just a heads up, it's coming. We are going to be doing a Yellow Jackets season 3 sort of pre-season roundup of theories, of thoughts on the trailer, of thoughts on all those photos that came out. We were going to wait a little bit until into the new year because we want to make sure that they're not going to throw anything big at us right as we release that episode. So, but it is coming and it will be before the episodes start again on Valentine's Day. But just so you know, that's on its way. We're just giving it a little more time to make sure we have most of the stuff that they're planning on throwing at us before the season.
Yeah. Are you guys planning, listeners, on doing a rewatch of season 2 and or season 1? I'm curious. I haven't decided. I think I'll definitely watch the season 2 finale. But I haven't decided if I'm gonna, especially because I've watched season 1. I don't know how many times at this point, and I've watched every episode of season 2 at least twice.
Yeah, same.
Let us know. Email us or leave a comment on one of the videos on Instagram.
Or DM us on Instagram.
And let us know.
If you have friends that are going to be kind of catching up on Yellow Jackets or that you're introducing it to, send them our way.
Yeah.
Our structure's a little weird because we started with season 2 and then we had to go back and do season 1 as sort of a, spoiler-filled, look back. But, all those episodes are sitting there, and they can watch it and hear our thoughts and see theories and see how right or wrong we were from in the beginning.
That's right.
But yeah, spread the word. We're coming back hard with season 3.
I can't wait.
But in the meantime, we'll see you next week with our sort of best of looking forward. And yeah, I said where they could find us already, or didn't I? What's happening, Andrea? You can find us, just once again, in case you didn't hear it the first time.
If we said it the first time.
Say it. Good Lord. At WatchersPodNJ on Instagram. You can email us at watcherspodnj@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram at Jody_Mim, JODIE_MIM.
And I'm at AQAndreaQ.
We will see you next week in our homes. That's not very exciting. But I think we're both going to be in our homes.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We'll see you at Christmas.
No,
we'll see you at New Year's.
I'm gonna be inside the ball that drops in Times Square. That's where I'm gonna be podcasting from.
So wave at us from that. Yeah. Wave at us from that.
You got it.
Even when I lived in New York, I never went to the Times Square thing.
Sounds
it's
like
such a shit show.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that.
People wear diapers.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. It's crazy.
I'm not wearing a diaper to watch a ball fall out of the sky.
No.
Okay, bye.